Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
All right, guys, so this is an amazing story. A software engineer was recently arrested for replicating the scheme from the 1999 movie Office Space in order to steal hundreds of thousands of dollars from his employer, Zulily. So here's the report. A software engineer siphoned more than $300,000 from his employer by introducing what prosecutors called a, quote, series of malicious software edits that wired money into his personal account. Now, if the scheme sounds like the plot of Office Space, that's because the authorities said it was partly inspired by the movie. When asked about the money, the 28-year-old engineer told authorities it was all gone because he had invested it in GameStop. Too perfect. Now, Office Space struck a nerve with an entire generation of miserable white-collar workers zombieing through their days, waging petty battles with the copy machine, their coworkers, and their hated bosses, wondering if there was anything more to life than a tedious Groundhog's Day of mind-numbing and soul-crushing work. You're living the American dream, but you hate your life. In the movie, these office workers at some anonymous tech company, they decide they're going to make a break for it, and they siphon off enough money from the company for them to break out of the dull monotony of their lives. Now, a version of the fantasy that many a white-collar worker has, I'm sure, indulged on their grinding commute, contemplating their self-constructed prison of mortgage payments, lifestyle expectations, and private school tuition payments. Well, art imitates life, and life apparently imitates art. A brand new study shows it's not just your sense that white-collar workers like lawyers, bankers, and other corporate office workers are deeply unhappy. They really actually are, by their own reporting, some of the most unhappy, unfulfilled, stressed out people in the entire country. Washington Post had this write-up of information that was gathered by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, quote, the happiest, least stressful, most meaningful jobs in America. I'll get to those professions that actually report the highest levels of happiness in a minute, but let's start here with the misery index. There are two industries at or near the bottom across the categories of happiness, meaning, and levels of stress. The first is labeled professional, scientific, and technical services, a sort of white-collar catch-all that would include your lawyers, accountants, and tech bros. And the second is finance and insurance, which is pretty self-explanatory. These white-collar workers got the degrees, they got their credentials, they got the upper middle-class incomes, and now they find themselves doing work that is boring and tedious at best, actively soul-crushing and immoral at worst. They're basically inessential workers, many layers of which could be removed with no one really noticing at all. This is not to pity them. After all, they are usually earning good money and benefiting from a society that has been designed to cater to their cultural and consumer tastes. They're oftentimes even treated as actual human beings in their workplaces with needs and wants rather than the interchangeable cogs that blue-collar and service workers usually find themselves treated as. The data, though, does reveal something interesting about human nature, specifically what feeds our soul and what crushes it. Now, it's no surprise that this is also one of the groups that did a big rethink during COVID. Working remotely from home with none of the office mini dramas or coffee breaks, many had a big realization about just how small their actual work was and how strange it was that they had oriented their whole lives around those work tasks, sacrificing family, hobbies, community time, and so much more. These are the people who are no longer racing for extra work and weekend hours, but are instead moving to lower cost places, leaning into an identity that exists outside of the workplace, actively changing their priorities and their goals after having been forced to take a break from the rat race during the pandemic. So if lawyers and bankers are the most miserable, who are the happiest workers? On the other end of the spectrum, kind of as an outlier in terms of happiness, meaning and low stress, is agriculture, logging, and forestry. Apparently, deeper research crowned lumberjacks the happiest of all workers. But basically, anyone who worked on a farm or in a forest in nature was pretty content. If office work is abstract and disconnected, farming and logging are tangible. They're concrete. One entails sitting indoors staring at a screen. The other requires outdoor physical activity, working directly with the land. I want to glorify it here. Logging is dangerous. Farmers saddled with debt have been committing suicide at high rates and are being forced off their land by giant agribusiness. But it again says something essential about human nature, that we find great satisfaction in being outside, doing work that is physical and is also measurable. Similar values are reflected in an analysis of which activities people found made them happiest and gave them the most meaning. The top of the list was religious and spiritual activities. Close behind was physical activity and caring for others, whether it was their own family or non-family members. Additional data showed that we found ourselves happiest when we were at a place of worship, at the home of someone else, or outdoors. These activities are at the core of what makes us human. Contemplating the existential beyond our day-to-day survival, using our bodies and labor to shape the world and provide for ourselves, provide for our families, caring for our tribe as deeply social and interconnected people. But because these activities are often not economic, don't result in much of anyone profiting from us, we've been trained by society to push these activities to the sidelines and to devalue the very things that make us the happiest and most embody our humanity. This set of values is also the antithesis of the obnoxious grind set ecosystem, which implores you to double down on putting money and things over family, spirituality, and mutual care. Bottom line, maybe don't write malicious code to steal from your employer a la Office Space, but whether you're a white-collar worker, blue-collar, or service worker, do make this the year that you rebel from the program and find small ways to feed your own soul. That would be a real way to break free from the so-called matrix, and it would be good for the whole world. I was endlessly fascinated by this list.
Yes.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.